Hi, this is Corey Johnston, and today's lesson is going to be a continuation of a previous lesson, one that I labeled Corey Johnston Matthew 6 in the YouTube search engine, but we didn't make it past the 15th verse, so we're going to pick up on the 16th verse. But before that, we just want to acknowledge its wider literary context. The Sermon of the Mount, which spans the range of Matthew's 5th through 7th chapter, constitutes the longest recorded sermon in history, and it's essentially the constitution of the kingdom. And at this juncture in the narrative, it assumes a narrower scope of the kingdom priorities. In other words, what positive virtues we are to cultivate in the pursuit of bringing that kingdom to earth and living in that kingdom in heaven. But the opening three verses, in fact, continue the momentum which was established in the antecedent chapter in the 6 verses, where he instructs not only basically how to do certain spiritual disciplines, so in alms and in prayer, and he establishes that it is possible to do them hypocritically. In other words, if we do it for public view, then the person who does these spiritual disciplines has the reward and the publicity they seek. And so fasting is also not immune to vain publicity, and the reality is that when we do what should be selfless deeds for publicity's sake, then we are tainting it with selfishness. Thus, even our virtues degenerate into vices. So that we do the spiritual practices is self-evident. What's not so obvious is how we are to do it. And we are instructed in specific reference to fasting that, and when you fast, do not be sad-faced like the hypocrites, for they disfigure their faces so that they appear to be fasting to men. Truly I say to you, they have their reward. So there's no sense in exaggerating the angst which we experience during fasting. And fasting is a legitimate spiritual practice. Now, if you do not cultivate prayer in the midst of fasting, then you're not fasting, you're starving yourself. So we can deprive the body and stimulate the soul by dwelling deeper into prayer, and he can guide us through our angst, but there's really no reason to exaggerate or advertise the fact that we are voluntarily afflicting ourselves with necessary suffering we feel is necessary for our spiritual advancement. But the hypocritical way to do it is the same as giving alms or prayer. They advertise the fact that they're doing it, and there's to be none of that amongst the authentic disciples. But you, when you fast, anoint your head and wash your face, so that you do not appear to men to be fasting, but to your Father who is in the secret place. And your Father who sees in secret shall reward you openly. So again, the repeated formula for alms and prayer is that if we cultivate the practice in private and by ourselves, then we will have all the recognition we truly need from the Father in heaven, who knows all and sees all. So there's no sense in publicly fasting and advertising the fact. We are to embrace the pain in stoic silence and not give any not be so conceited as to add to the appearance of our discomfort to make us appear more righteous. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. So any earthly item that we treasure is perishable and cannot truly belong to us, because in order for that to remain, we'd have to guard it 24/7. So the items of the world, the items of creation, do have an all too common potential to usurp the Creator as the object of adoration, worship, and affection. Now, plenty of people treat money as they would God. They invest it, they sacrifice for it, they lay up all night, they lose sleep over it, and they work at it all day. But we are implicitly admonished to cultivate the counterintuitive virtues which come and finding comes not from seeking. That's a paradox that's going to take on new meaning as we delve further into the discourse. But lay up yourselves treasures in the heavens, where neither moth doth rush, nor thieves do break in and steal. So if we invest our treasure in eternity, then there is no earthly rust or corruption or potential to be stolen. What we have in heaven belongs to us, and no person can take it. It is a gift from Elohim, which, unlike the other gifts of Elohim, the earthly items of creation, cannot be stolen from us. So it is imperishable, imperfect, and indestructible, or rather perfect. For where your treasure is, there your heart shall be also. Now, it's a fact of human life that we tend to gravitate around and surround ourselves with the people, places, and things which we like. So the unrighteous people will naturally gravitate towards your own, and we are to separate ourselves from sinful society. After all, what fellowship hath darkness with light? What fellowship hath Yahweh with Baal? To quote Paul in 2 Corinthians 6:14. But if we do invest our treasure in our priorities and maintain the priorities in the course to heaven, then we will have an eternal inheritance which will not disappoint. The lamp of the body is the eye, and therefore your eye is good. If therefore your eye is good, all your body shall be enlightened. So the body is, the eyes are frequently referred to as the windows of the soul, and by this a similar analogy, he's compared to the lamp of the body. And so what we expose ourselves to, the sights we behold, and the people we surround ourselves with, who our eyes seek out, essentially, will determine the quality or lack thereof in our body. But if your eye is evil, all your body shall be darkened. If then the light that is within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? So the same eye which has the potential to illuminate and make everything that is light and understood also has the same potential for the negative inverse proportion of darkness, which is analogous to ignorance and sin. And it is a spiritual and a mental darkness, but he's using physically relatable objects to as the metaphor for the analogy. No one is able to serve two masters, for either he shall hate the one and love the other, or else he shall cling to the one and despise the other. You are not able to serve Elohim and wealth. Now, the final word is more frequently translated as mammon, which was an Aramaic term, which was the common language then in currency for God of wealth. So that we just want to understand. But the principle is that there can be no divided loyalty, and ultimately divided loyalties are unsustainable. Ergo, we are to commit ourselves wholly, totally, unreservedly, and uncompromisingly to Yahweh, who is the object of our worship and our sovereign master, who we submit towards and witness to and message for and minister in. And this reminds us in the Old Testament when Elijah similarly chides the nation of Israel in 1 Kings 18 verse 21. The rival deity was Baal, who was native to Canaanites, but it was also worshipped in the Levant, or Phoenicia, or modern Lebanon. But that's another subject entirely. So neutrality is impossible to maintain any more than divided loyalties. That's another subject, which takes us to Matthew 12:30. We're going to stick on the next verse. Because of this, I say to you, do not worry about your life, what you shall eat or drink, or about your body, what you shall put on. Is life not more than the food, and the body more than the clothing? So worry has very real spiritual consequences and physical defects. It can, I think eventually in the narrative he asks the question, which of you by worrying can add a day to your life? So worry contributes to our premature death. And so worry is antithetical to faith. Now, at this juncture in the narrative, he expounds on the transitions from expounding on the limitations of wealth to the invisible enemy of worry, which is a spiritual pollutant of sorts. And if you value your life, if you treasure it, then, but the Savior says that by losing your life, you shall find it elsewhere. I believe Matthew 16:25 or thereabouts. And the bot now, is life more than food and body? Now, that is a rhetorical question and seemingly self-evident. Sadly, most people do not consider life more than their physical needs, wants, and appetites. But they shall not inherit the kingdom, because where our heart is, there too is our treasure, and anyone who invests in earthly treasure is investing in an inferior foundation which will not last in eternity. Look at the birds of the heavens, for they neither sow nor reap, nor gather into storehouses, yet your Father of the heaven feeds them. Are they not worth more than they? Are you not worth more than they? So he's using familiar sight, familiar object, birds of the heavens, and they do not labor to eat, at least in the same manner that we do. They do not reap or sow, and yet there is always a provision for their food, their base material appetites, without which they would physically perish. The Father always provides a way for them. They still have to fly and get their food, but it is ultimately at the Father's provision. And how much more are we, who are made in his image, worth to him and valuable to him than birds or any other animals? So that's a rhetorical question at the tail end. And which of you, by worrying, is able to add 1 year to his lifespan? So we said much of what we could have said in advance of commenting on this verse, but we're just going to reiterate that worry has very physical consequences. It can damage livers and internal organs if cultivated in the excess into an unnatural extreme, and even more all-encompassing than the physical contaminations are the spiritual and mental defects. Worry instills us with fear, and fear and faith are antithetical. Ergo, we cannot, no more than any man can serve two masters. To bring us back to the 24th verse, can fear and faith simultaneously reside in the same vessel at the same time? So why do you worry about clothing? Note well the lilies of the field, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. So the plants which spring from the ground also are not subjected to the same cycles of labor that we are. Their growth is enabled and provided by Elohim, and they are their existence is effortless on their behalf. They don't really have to do anything. They're not capable of moving or thinking. They're not endowed with a lot of the attributes that we know, enjoy, and take for granted. And I say to you that even Solomon in all his esteem was not dressed like one of these. So Solomon was the ruler of Israel, one of the Messiah's ancestors, whose reign generally constitutes a golden age of Israel. He was the third and final monarch of the United Kingdom, and his reign witnessed the unprecedented cultural influence and influx of wealth. So but even in all his royal magnificence was not as splendorously arrayed as the fields of flowers which are in the field. But if Elohim so clothes the grass of the field, which exists today, and tomorrow is thrown into the furnace, how much more you, O you of little faith? So once more he's reminding them of their value and estimation in the eyes of the Father, which is exceedingly greater than any other created creature, and he's also chiding them for their lack of faith, because he who worries about these things is indicting themselves essentially of faithlessness. So it shows a disconcerting lack of faith in the Father, who is able to provide all things, and the specific name is Yahweh Yireh, which speaks of his attribute or manifestation of provision. Do not worry then, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? Now, these are common concerns which we entertain in the course of our day, and there's nothing unrighteous with worrying about the quality of food we digest, or the how we're going to dress ourselves when we go out in public, and we, of course, need to drink and stay hydrated to survive. But if if at the end of the day these are our most pressing questions, then we're really not living with eternity values in mind, and we cannot claim any inheritance in that blessed abode. For all these the Gentiles seek for, and your Father of the heaven knows that you need all these things. So this brings us back once more to the 8th verse, where it says, your Father knows what you need before you ask of him, so why pray at all? And we do comment on that on the discourse of which this is an extension of, but the same principle remains intact for the provision of anything that we can conceivably pray for, the accumulation of anything in the world, or any item of provision. The Father is intimately acquainted with all our needs. He knows us better than we know ourselves, and therefore he knows exactly what we need. Now, we frequently confuse our wants, desires, and passions for our needs, and we tend to elevate them to an unnatural realm. But he does know us and will give us what we want, whether it's give us what we need, be it prosperity or poverty. But seek first the kingdom of Elohim and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added to you. The preeminent priority in everything and all things is to be the kingdom of Elohim and his righteousness, and everything else will fall into line. Anything else that we could possibly want or need to be satisfied will be satisfied if we attend to the logically prior axiomatic principle of bringing the kingdom. Now, we are not content to settle on the promise for the kingdom to come, although it is to be our most fervent and righteous prayer, but we are to endeavor to bring what we can of the kingdom and the earth. So we can bring heaven to earth. We should not think of them as the principles of heaven as uninhabitable in earthly context. Do not then worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow shall have its own worries, and each day has enough evil of itself. This is a natural human concern, worrying about the future, but he advises us not to spend an excessive or an inordinate amount of time worrying about the things which are beyond our power to predict and beyond our power to control, but to have faith and attend to the present, because there is always, always, always work to do for the kingdom, and we should not be distracted from that by dwelling excessively on the future. So that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much. Tune in next time. Bye-bye.